Hey everyone, this is Nico Renshaw from the Decentraland Foundation with another video about creating scenes with the Creator Hub. So in this video, I want to talk about smart items. Let's open a scene and I'll show you what those are all about. So most of the items that you have by default here are all static. They're all just 3D models. But if I open the smart items folder, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of things and they all have special properties that can be configured. They can be, in some cases, very straightforward to use, but they can also be configured in very deep and creative ways. You'll see that there is a very deep rabbit hole in how you can configure smart items, and you don't even need to code to do any of that. But in this first video, let's look at the basics. So let's add just a couple of simple smart items. Let's add a door, for example. And notice how well this door matches the door frame. That is not a coincidence. And let's add a chest here. These are two smart items that work right out of the box, and even though I can configure a lot about them, they work just as well without changing anything. So let's open a preview. If I now open the preview, you'll see that I can interact with the door and with the chest. And these are two smart items that work right out of the box. Let's take a look at a couple of other smart items. So we also have levers, for example. There's a few variations of the same, and there's also buttons. There's quite a lot of buttons. They all look different, but they perform basically the same. Let's look at how these behave by default. So if I pull a lever, you'll see that it switches position, and if I push a button, it does a little animation, but that's about it, because of course I need to hook these up to different things. For example, I can make the button open the door. Let's do precisely that. If I select the button, you'll see that it has a bunch of properties, but the most important one is what happens when the button is clicked. I can assign actions, and here I can select from all of the different smart items that are currently in my scene. In this case, I'll pick the wooden door, and I select the option open or close. So with that, I should be able to just open the door by pushing the button. Let's check it out. There we go. Of course, I can still open the door by clicking the door directly, so I could also edit the door's properties to remove that. The door also has a when clicked action, just like the one in the button, and I can remove that. And now the door will not be openable by clicking on the door directly. I have to necessarily click on the button. Among the properties of the door, you can also see that it has a hover text property. This refers to the text that I see when I mouse over the door. In this case it says open or close, and since that's no longer the case, let's write something like this door opens elsewhere. So now if I mouse over the door, it says this door opens elsewhere, and I can't do anything if I click on it, but instead if I click on the button, the door will activate. Let's do the same for the lever. So the lever, there is a when activated and when deactivated. It's two different conditions. One is when I pull the lever one way and when I pull the lever the other way. So here I can map this to the fantasy chest, to the action of opening it, and when I deactivate it, I can select the fantasy chest and select the action of closing it. So now if I pull on the lever, it opens and closes the chest. So I can also perform multiple actions all at once. So for example, I can pick this assign action and add as many actions as I want. For example, I can make it so that the lever opens both the chest and the door. So now with this, both things are activated at the same time. Now of course here we were configuring the smart items at a very superficial and basic level. But in every single smart item we can open the advanced mode, and there you'll find that there is a whole lot more to configure. You can define absolutely everything about the smart item, from the sound it produces to adding conditions so that it only activates if certain things apply. We won't be covering any of that in this tutorial. I want to keep this one basic, but just know that if you want to dive deep there is a lot you can configure. So let's look at some other smart items. Let's look at the trigger area smart item, which is another very useful one. So this creates an orange area that is only visible when I'm in edit mode. Let's look at this from above. Of course, this area is invisible to the players whenever they enter the scene, but whenever they walk inside this area or out of this area, there are a few actions that I can trigger. So there's actions I can trigger when entering and actions I can trigger when leaving the area. In this case, let's do it so that entering the area opens the door and leaving the area closes the door. So let's add an action. And let's make the wooden door open. And on the player leaves area, let's also add an action and make the wooden door close. So now if I enter preview, I can just open and close this door without having to click anywhere. And since I extended the area of this trigger area both inside and out of the building, I can do the same from the inside too. Let's now look at platforms. There's a whole bunch of different floating platforms, and they all look different, but they basically all either move up and down or back and forth. So let's add one that moves up and down, and this one kind of matches the style of the rest of my scene, and it has a bunch of fields I can configure. So for one thing, I can configure the height, how high we want it to move up. In this case 10 meters is a bit too much, let's make it a bit less. Let's change the duration too, it takes 5 seconds to move up, let's make that a little bit less as well. It also is set up to auto start and to loop, meaning that it will continuously move up and down, and I can also add different events whenever it finishes moving up or down, but let's keep it simple for now. So there is my platform moving up and down, and I can now jump on it and reach this part of my scene which I couldn't reach before. So the last smart item I want to show you is the video player smart item. This is a video screen where I can stream videos either live or pre-recorded. And yeah, let's adjust this to the wall. And I can just paste a URL here. And I can also set up other properties, like for example if it starts playing from the start, or if it loops, I can also hook up the playing of this video to events in the scene, or trigger other things whenever this starts playing, but for now let's keep it simple too. So unfortunately I can't just paste a link to YouTube or to similar sites, because these sites tend to be quite protective about where their content is shown, and since Decentraland is not HTML, I can't for example show the YouTube link or the YouTube logo or the ads and all of that. So I can however show content from other places. For example, Vimeo lets me upload content and share it inside Decentraland, which is what we are doing here. So here I'm showing a video with some vintage content of the good old initial days of Decentraland. I can also live stream to this video player smart item. In the documentation there is extensive information and best practices about how I can use OBS for this streaming. And yeah, there's also a few other options that are described here in the documentation. But for now, I hope that you have fun with this and happy building. Thanks for watching.